I have been invited today because for the past 8 months, I've been focused on raising awareness about the conflict between policies based on gender identity and women's rights. I'm not the only one, of course, that is currently speaking about this in Spain, luckily. But I've been talking to women all over Spain, thanks to the wonder of technology, both privately and publicly, invited by different feminist organizations to give a talk that I prepared at the beginning of the year. That talk has proved to be quite successful in terms of conveying the depths of the dangers of the new legislation proposals that our government is currently pushing very hard for. I'm not an academic nor a philosopher, so I didn't rely on any theoretical approach, but instead I decided to create a very simple and practical narrative that could describe the situation as it is. And I think that's why it has reached all kinds of people, regardless of the previous knowledge of the situation or whether they were even remotely familiar with the concept of queer theory or not. So it's very likely that it could also be useful for you in your activism because, I mean, anyone can do this. One of my first concerns was to overcome one of the main obstacles we encounter when trying to explain to ordinary citizens what's going on with gender identity politics. And that is the incredulity of our listeners. For the general population, this is not possible. It can't be true. They cannot believe that, for instance, rapists are being locked with women in women's prisons, because that doesn't make any sense. So the sheer audacity of transgender policies is not only helping them in devising bold policies, but it's also an obstacle for us in explaining them and their consequences. So what can we do? We can present all the evidences so people might not believe us at the beginning, but they will believe their eyes. I'm going to share some slides with you now because I would like to tell you how I've been doing this in a very, very, very simple way. So I think for everyone, that it's very important to focus. We have to stick to women's rights because by mentioning trans rights or trans laws, people, we are very easily accused of transphobia, but those are not our issues. It's very good if we organize information by topic. It will show a background and a context. And this way, your examples are not random or isolated anecdotes, but examples of the shift in paradigm. It's also very good to emphasize with your potential audience because they might know nothing or very little on the matter, and we should give them the opportunity to follow what is being said. So they have to have enough information to join all the dots by themselves, and all mentioned references should be present in the information. And about the sources, it's very, very important to quote from serious, respected sources and avoid at all costs right-wing sources because that will get us linked with all that way of thinking, and it will cast a shadow of suspicion over our intentions. It's very usual for feminists to be accused of being right-wing or far right-wing. Happens in the UK with Posey Parker, for instance, and in Spain, Lidia Falcón has been accused of being far right, which is an outrageous claim. You should always add a link to your source of information so no one could accuse you of inventing things or being a scaremonger. And it's very, very important to follow official voices, political parties or transgender organizations, because they are the ones actually making the policies or advocating for them. And of course, it's basic to stick to the facts because the evidences are usually strong enough, especially pictures. They will speak by themselves. So I'm going to give you a sort of example by focusing on one of the subjects that I care most. This is an example of how I presented the talk. And in the title, I didn't mention anything about transgender issues or trans rights. we are very, very concerned about women's rights, and I wanted to present all the dangers that this ideology is bringing to our rights. So also we have to explain why this is important, because usually women are told to be nice and that we should allow people to express themselves and to live as they please. But those individual behaviors, when aggregated, that's the basis for statistics. So individual behaviors in the end are what appear on any data that is going to be used by feminism in order to show progress or relapses on female equality in our societies. So we have to show that it's very, very important to keep sex segregated statistics. And that also will open the door for you to later on mention the Declaration on Sex-Based Rights for Women. So this is just an example. Like I said, it's very important for me, the topic of male violence. But this is an example you could do with other a topic like sports or wage gap or any other subject that you're interested in. In my presentation, I did several sections. So I had different examples from different aspects that were being affected by transgender rights. So in the end, also the accumulative effect was quite heavily felt in the audience. But this is an example how male crimes are being accounted as females. All these examples, all these outrageous claims were committed by transgender males, trans-identified males that claim to be women, and journalists didn't even consider to tell the audience that these were men. I can share this information with you, and you can follow the links. So as I said before, pictures are important, because if you show that this title, this headline saying that this is a woman that accessed child abuse image while being in hospital, then you can understand this is influencing the female statistics of crimes. And also there's another consequence that is going to be important to take into account. If this person is considered to be a female in order to have this crime accounted as committed by a woman, then most likely this person is going to be to a female prison, sharing spaces with the female prisoners. So we have to document everything that's going on. This is a case that I won't go very much in detail because we don't have much time. But this was so outrageous that is one of the examples that you should not try to show at the first moment, because even if it's real, of course, people still won't believe you. The original headline was "Woman Set a Person on Fire." And with this picture, everyone thought that this was the person that had been burned. In fact, this was the person that identified as a woman and had set a woman on fire. They changed the headline after the female outrage and on Twitter and on social media. So official sources I mentioned are very good to show that this is indeed happening, and this is something that is not something at the fringe of society, but from sources of power. So this is, for instance, a snapshot of the proposal for self-ID that was presented some time ago at our parliament. So people can see later on that this is official, and that the proposals of legislation that are already official in other countries are arriving into Spain. This is an indirect source of accessing official information, because it's an article I read at the time. It's about some declarations, some official statements that the Justice Secretary of the Scottish Government made in the Parliament of Scotland. And then it confirmed that criminals were allowed to self-identify when they were arrested. So this was, as I just said, had double effect of affecting the crime statistics, but also that, as you see, some experts were warning also that it could result in offenders being placed in female-only refuges or prisons. So female inmates would also be exposed to danger. So there are other cases, like in the United States. This is an outrageous situation as well, because the Democratic Party, the committee of the New York State of the Democratic Party, they changed the rules of the leadership of the committee, because they had parity and they had equality. The highest ranking officers should be either male or female. But there was this change in policy, and now the new rules require that the two leaders did not identify as the same gender unless they both identified as a non-binary. This is a snapshot of the changing of rules. You can see that the text in red is the ruled out text, and the text in green is the new rules. Of course, this was introduced by a trans-identified male, again, as we have been saying. So this person wanted to be the one that occupied the female leader in their district. So by allowing this change in rules, the committee changed the idea of parity. And this is a picture that is I had a very strong influence. I was very shocked when I saw this, because you could see that males were changing the policies in order to eliminate the possibility for women to be present. If this Emilia recording were someone that was doing things from their own place, this wouldn't have the effect it has had, because this comes from an official political party that is going to have a huge influence on politics. I wanted to add that this change in policy allowed this male to present themselves as the female candidate for the district, the 37 district. So now, because of the change in policies, two males represent this district. This is official news from the Board of Elections in the city of New York. And as you see, it can have an impact on the women's presence in politics. As for transgender organizations, I wanted to tell you this case has been outrageous in Spain. This man claims to be a woman and mother of 4. And this is not some random person in the internet in a fringe position, but this is part of a campaign that the most powerful transgender organization in Spain was pushing on Trans Visibility Day last May. This person in the video that is part of this campaign claimed that some trans people wanted to they had the need to transition, but some other people didn't. And the important thing was to respect that feeling those people had, and that we should treat them according to their felt identity. This is something that I translated for you. You have it at the left side of the slide. So this is, like I said, not some dark person, some unknown person at the fringe of society, but this is part of the campaign of the organization that is pushing for self-ID in Spain, and it was part of a campaign that went by sea, land, and air, as are known in the internet world, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, as part of the new gender identities that are trying to be pushed into law in Spain. We also have to make room to talk about the Declaration on Women's Sex-Based Rights, and which is the feminist answer to legislative changes. In my presentation, I have information on the declaration, and also add the link to the Spanish version of it, because of course we have to be aware that we are talking to now we are talking to an international audience, and not everything is available in our languages, but the declaration is translated to many languages, so we can have the it's translated for our audience. So we have to recognize that there is a conflict of rights, and it's only a matter before you realize it, a matter of time. This is just an example that this journalist in 2013, she was rooting for transgender women, as they called her. She thought that trans-identified males were women in a way, but she had her big trans moment 6 years later. Because
Amparo, sorry, I have to get you to stop.
This is the last slide.
Oh, perfect. Okay, great.
This is it. So even if we are talking to someone that is not convinced, it's just a matter of time if you keep showing them that there is this conflict of rights. And this is the end of my presentation. But I wanted to reply to a question from Yelena. I hope I'm reading her name right. And she said that my impression is that trans activists have already realized from which point of view one speaks whenever one puts women in the first place. So they accuse you of being transphobic in advance. So she said that I understand sticking to women's rights at the level of rhetoric as a tactic aimed at people who are not familiar to the issue, not the activists. And she was asking, am I right? So I think we should stick to talking about women's rights all the time, because, for instance, the issue that I focused on in my very short presentation, male violence, because they claim they have female gender identity, they say they have been a woman all their life, and therefore their crimes should not be counted as male crimes. So we cannot let that statement or assertion go unchallenged. Sex exists. There are male and female people. That's one thing. So we are not transphobic in the sense they say the term TERF, trans, exclusionary, radical feminist. We are not against people that are trans per se. We are against the inclusion of males in the category of females. So this is the subject for us. And this is the basis for the Women's Declaration.